Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a word that, well, you probably think you know exactly what it means: manipulation. But we're going to unpack what it really is, how it actually works, and dig into this surprising idea that maybe, just maybe, it's a core part of what makes us human. So let's just cut right to the chase. I've got a question for you. Are you a manipulator? Seriously, think about it for a second. Your gut reaction is probably, no way, of course not. I get it, it's such a loaded word, right? Instantly makes you think of some cartoon villain twisting his mustache. But what if the real answer is yes? The source we're breaking down today makes a pretty bold claim. Not only are you a manipulator, but you've been doing it your entire life. All right, so let's get into it. To even begin to understand this, we have to do something kind of tough. We need to strip away all that negative baggage the word carries. We've got to look at manipulation totally objectively and move way beyond these simple labels of good or evil. See, according to our source, manipulation is literally everywhere. Think about it. A kid throwing a tantrum in the grocery store, that's a simple but man, is it an effective technique to get what they want. You, in a job interview, you're carefully selecting your best qualities to highlight and, conveniently leaving out the time you accidentally replied all to the entire company. Both of those, they're forms of manipulation. It's just a fundamental, constant part of how we interact with each other. So, okay, if it's not automatically a bad thing, then what in the world is it? Let's get a really clear, really neutral definition on the table. Honestly, this is the key to understanding everything else we're going to talk about. And here it is. Take a close look at that. Notice what's missing? Words like evil, harmful, deceptive. Nope. This definition is completely neutral. It's just an intentional act of influence. You're trying to get a certain outcome. It doesn't pass any judgment on whether your goal is good for you, bad for them, or totally harmless. Now, a super common question here is, okay, but what's the difference between persuasion and manipulation? Our source lays this out really clearly, and it's not what you think. They aren't opposites. Actually, persuasion is just one tool of manipulation. It's all part of the much bigger category of influence. Think of persuasion as like one of the more obvious tools in a giant toolkit. So if persuasion is just one tool in the box, what are the others? Well, our source breaks down literally every act of influence into three core components. And once you see these, you're going to start seeing the hidden mechanics behind, well, pretty much every conversation you have. And here they are, the big three: power, persuasion, and deception. These three tools, whether you use them by themselves or mix and match them, are the basic building blocks of all manipulation, from the most innocent little request to the most complex strategic plan. Let's break each one down. First up, we have power. And this definition is probably not what you're expecting. It's not about brute force or having a fancy title. It's about your ability to help someone else get what they want. Your value to them, that's your power over them. It could be your skills, your connections, your knowledge, even just your reputation. Next up is persuasion. We already touched on this, but let's be super precise. This is the direct approach, right? You're trying to convince someone by laying out new facts or a different argument to change their mind. The only problem is, it's often not that effective on its own, especially if the other person knows you have a stake in the outcome. And that brings us to the third, and let's be honest, the most potent tool: deception. Now hold on, this is simply the control of information. Think of people like, a machine. Information goes in as the input, and actions come out as the output. So if you can control the input, the information they get, you can influence the output. And yeah, this is where things get ethically tricky. So we have our three tools: power, persuasion, and deception. Now for the fun part. Let's see how they get mixed together to create the techniques we all see and, probably use every single day. Oh yeah, the guilt trip. We have all been on the giving or receiving end of one of these. It feels like it's just pure emotion, right? But underneath, it's actually a pretty sophisticated blend of all three of those tools working in perfect harmony. This breakdown just shows the mechanics so clearly. A guilt trip uses power because the other person is worried about their reputation, about looking bad, and you hold the power to help them save face. It uses persuasion when you convince them that what they did was a really big deal. And of course, it can use deception when you maybe exaggerate the details a little bit to make them feel even more indebted to you. It's a perfect example of how these tools combine And the guilt trip is just one of so many examples. Things like intimidation, seduction, or when someone minimizes their own mistakes or they blame someone else for everything, it's all operating on the exact same principles. They're all just different recipes using the same 3 ingredients: power, persuasion, and deception. Okay, so we get the theory, we see the tools, but our source takes it a huge step further by actually laying out a practical 6-step framework for turning these ideas into a deliberate, conscious strategy.
And here's that framework. It starts simple. Know exactly what you want. Then you map out the playing field, who and what is involved. The really crucial step is number 3, gather information. You have to understand what other people want. From there, you can spot your leverage points, you take action, often by controlling that flow of information, and then you learn from what happened. Understanding this isn't just about becoming more influential. It's also about recognizing when these very same tactics are being used on you.
And all of this brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most important part of the entire discussion. Because look, it's one thing to have a powerful set of tools. It is a completely different thing to know how and when and if you should use them. So let's talk about the ethics of it all. This is the classic question, isn't it? The ends versus the means. If you manipulate a friend into finally quitting smoking, a fantastic outcome, does it matter that maybe you had to use a bit of deception to get them there? Our source doesn't give an easy answer here because, well, there isn't one. It's a question every single one of us has to wrestle with on our own. Ultimately, you have to draw your own lines in the sand. You have to ask yourself these hard questions. Could this cause harm I don't intend? Am I punching down, taking advantage of someone vulnerable? And maybe the most important one, was there a better, more honest way to get the same good result? The choice of what's right and wrong, that's on you. But the source is crystal clear on one thing. Understanding how all this works, developing this kind of power, it comes with a huge responsibility. Just because you can manipulate a situation doesn't mean you should. The whole point is that you have to actively and seriously consider the impact of your actions on other people. And that leaves us right here. We've taken this loaded word, manipulation, and we've broken it down into its core components: power, persuasion, and deception. Now you can see the mechanics at play everywhere, in your own life, in the news, everywhere. So the only question left is the one on the screen. Now that you know the tools, what are you going to build?